Thank you. First of all, one heck of a show. I've loved this event. So well organized, incredible content. I hope you feel the same. It's the first time for me in Slovakia, and I'm incredibly impressed with the city and the people in it. It's a great place to be. So today, I think the only conversation that anybody's having is Gen AI. Yeah. Oh yeah, cool. Excellent, thank you. I need makeup, hair, anything? No, I don't need that. So today I want to go through our approach to Gen AI. This is just a small taster of all the different kind of stack we have for machine learning in general, and of course Gen AI. I'm just going to concentrate on a few aspects which I think you might find interesting. And the range of topics I'll cover are not just about how to build on AWS, but also some of the other helper services we have and things you might not be aware, and some of our ML ops approach and FMOps approach that we might want for you to consider using as soon as you want to go beyond just building a POC, when you do something properly in production. So just to start off, I just wanted to kind of set the scene here. I think a lot of people might not be aware of how long we've been doing machine learning at scale, at least 20 years. So you'll be aware, of course, of Amazon.com. We have a huge range of services, machine learning services running behind the scenes, recommendation engines, content creation, all that kind of stuff. And we've been doing this for a very, very long time. And of course, that fits in beautifully with all our supply chain, all those capabilities, and many of these things we've kind of packaged up as that other organizations use now. And then we've got the whole robotics way that we have a lot of our warehouses running, and even our prime delivery drones, where they have all the vision ML at edge all deployed in them, and we've been doing that for years. 2016 for even their delivery. Alexa is another really interesting one that a lot of people use around the world. There's literally millions of interactions every hour across the world in all our devices. And that really underpinning that is about 20 ML services that kind of helps deliver that kind of seamless interaction with our customers. And if we go forward to the kind of organizations that we've democratized ML for, there's some names here, maybe hard to read, but there's over 100,000 customers that actually around the world that use ML. And of course, within those customers, sometimes it's hundreds or thousands of people that actually use the service. So it's quite an exponentially higher number than those actual people using it. So we've learned a lot really about how to empower people to do ML well in a secure space, and with a lot of innovation that they can actually tap into to be able to deliver their ML use cases. So now we're going to just position ourselves. We've been talking a lot about Gen AI today in the conference across all the different sessions, but there was a really interesting study from McKinsey that came out very recently, where they were looking at really the top use cases that are going to have the biggest impact on organizations. And they kind of looked at the different functions, and then these are the areas that they've considered are the ones that are going to be disrupted most in a positive way, I feel, and it's going to reinvent the way they do stuff in these spaces. We will touch upon some of these when we go through. I'm not going to go through all the usual use cases that we tend to help our customers build, because it's pretty similar to what you've heard already and you've read about everywhere. But I want to go into behind the scenes on that really. So we've been talking to all our customers globally over the last few years, and much more so over the last 2 years, about the kind of things that they need to be able to build and innovate in the Gen AI space. And we've kind of distilled it to kind of 4 areas that we've wanted to create to assist these enterprises to, and not just to be able to experiment in that space, but also to build and deploy real world applications in production at scale and securely. So I'm just going to go through some of these areas here, and then we can jump off to other topics later on. But we've got I'll break it down to each one of these. But the first one here, this is the underpinning philosophy we have with Gen AI. And this is specifically that we really don't believe that one big foundation model is going to solve all the use cases that organizations come to us for. There's so many variations out there. There's literally tens of thousands of foundation models. And we wanted to make sure that we made all that available to our customer base. So this is the idea of democratizing the access to all these foundation models. You choose what's best for you. You experiment with it at will. And of course, that means not just now, but all the stuff coming in the future. We're continuously wanting to bring that into the fold so you can have access to it. So we'll start with Amazon Bedrock. Some of you might have heard of it. Does anybody heard of Bedrock before? Or is it new to... Okay. Perfect. So Bedrock has been in preview for quite a while. So it's been highly anticipated by most of the market we talk to, and we've been really experimenting with this for the last many months with some of the world's largest organizations. We'll show you through that. But the essence of this is it's one of those services which we do very often in AWS, where we want to take you away from all the complexity of deployments and try to think of infrastructure and building all the scaffolding that you sometimes have to do before you can get to the value of Gen AI use cases. So what we've done with there is we've created a Gen AI as a service. So in effect, all the heavy lifting will get done for you. You just basically have a big selection of foundation models you can choose, and we've got a few listed here like Anthropic and Meta, etc. And then you can really even privately customize them in your own space. So we've made sure that we built the privacy as an absolute underpinning to everything we do here, and we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail. And let's just look at a little bit more about how that kind of... Oh, and by the way, it's GA in Europe just the last few days, and of course in the US now, and a couple other places like Japan and Singapore. And over the next few weeks, that will become GA in many more regions. It's GA in Frankfurt in Europe, of course, at the moment. So if we kind of look at some of the available foundation models that we have, of course, we've got Llama, which is, I think, it's a huge kind of coup for us to have Llama 2 that you can actually fine-tune on AWS. And I just put a few of those classic use cases that each of these models tend to be used for by our customers and by the developers worldwide. This is a shifting picture, of course, and there'll be many more than those, but I just wanted to give you the top, few of them here. If we go and look at beyond just an easy way to access a foundation model, you really need to understand how can I execute actions beyond just choosing a model, training and doing stuff, because really you've got very complex scenarios that happen in organizations where you want to automate stuff, orchestrate multiple things where you go and pull data from somewhere, you're going to do an action after you pull the data and got something back from it. And these are quite complex to build. We did a workshop yesterday here, and we were showing people how to code some of these things up. And it is, in any platform you build, there's a lot of building blocks and code snippets that you have to put together and chain them all together. So we've done the same with agents that we've done with Bedrock in general. We've automated all that for you, drag and drop, really simple. You can connect to your data sources. You can automate the creation of this and deploys it for you and runs it, which really takes a lot of that kind of complexity and heavy lifting that we keep referring to, that we're trying to get to avoid. I mentioned a few companies that we've been experimenting with and also going to production with, and some of them are here, big names you might recognize, Booking.com, Philips. And we built with them really a whole range of capabilities. Some of them are content creation, summarization, customer support, all the usual use cases that you might be aware of. We built these and got to production with them at scale. Okay, so that's one way of doing Gen AI on AWS. There's another way, and this is using SageMaker. So this is one of the world's largest machine learning platform. There's more people using that than any other machine learning platform. And we've got something called Jumpstart. So Jumpstart, in essence, is really a bit of everything. It's a bit of a hub for all these different foundation models and things and accelerators that you can actually experiment with very easily. And it'll run in your own SageMaker instance or space. So you got full control of it. But what we've tried to do is we've tried to give you a whole series of accelerators and easy ways to kind of try an idea out or actually build something end to end. And of course, sometimes you can configure these if you wanted to, specifically for your use case. You can upload your own data in it and get some of the results out of it. And one of the things I love about this also, if you're in an organization and you've got lots of people experimenting and trying these kind of little things that we've given you for free, you can adapt them, adjust them, and then you can share them internally. It becomes like an internal resource that only your organization can see. So you can start building your own internal hub of all these little accelerators for use cases and things using our Jumpstart templates as an easy way to get in there. It's a really simple process to actually use them, and we have a lot of models in there. So I showed you a few in Bedrock. In SageMaker Jumpstart, we've got hundreds. It's a whole different scale. So practically every kind of useful or famous kind of foundation models available in there, with all the workbooks and examples ready for you to play with, or you can just build it from scratch. So you just choose the model. You can deploy it immediately in your space. You can fine tune it, and you can get all the kind of put your own data in it, etc. And of course, you can integrate it with the rest of the SageMaker features or capabilities like MLOps or anything else you want to do in there. So it's really a quick intro, but you can actually make it go into the full production pipeline that you might have already you might be using on SageMaker. So these are some of the things that you would consider when you're looking at using something like Jumpstart. So you have full control of optimizing the instances you choose, the cost of running it. Whereas with Bedrock, that's done for you. So you just tell it I want to run this, and it'll just keep scaling automatically and does all the background infrastructure for you. With this, you can do much more specific tweaks relevant for that particular use case and the constraints of price and things like that for it. The way you even choose which model it is, we have a lot of benchmarks inside and everything else and ways to compare different foundation models, which one's going to be the best for you. And we use things like the Stanford Helm benchmark and many others here. And you can decide on what constraints of latency and things like this that you want to be building out for, and all of these under your own control. And of course, the one at the bottom, which is this data guardrails, although all our Gen AI and ML offerings have got very, very strong controls for your data and your security and everything else. But with this one, you can even have even more choice about where particular residency needs to be in a specific space or environment and things like that, and the way you deploy it, even on-prem. So, this is just a little selection of some of the models. There's a lot on there, I know, but I just picked some of the big ones they might recognize. Of course, we have our own Alexa one in there too, and a lot of the tasks that. So not only do we just give you a model a playground, but we pre-built solutions for lots of classic machine learning problems, like summarization, of course, in the Gen AI task, but the normal things like forecasting and stuff like this that you normally do with your machine learning stack. And all these are built for you to play around with. And it's, a good quick introduction of how you can do something, a gold standard of ways of doing things. So we've covered the easier way to build. I just picked two of our platform build stack that you can actually use to do those. There's many other approaches, but I just picked two. So now let's go into the data. The data is really where you differentiate your offering. And unfortunately, just to counteract that kind of thing, this is some research we did recently. And it's a very depressing thing about how most organizations find the biggest problem they have, or the friction point they have, is the data. The quality of the data is not up to scratch. And this could mean so many different things depending on what is the context of this conversation. It either could mean, for example, I can't access it very well, or I haven't got a single version of the truth, which is it's a holy grail that most companies are trying to pursue, or it's just not in a format that I can actually get to easily and move it into a space where I can actually do something with. Is it my microphone here? Yeah. Okay, so there's another really important aspect for really looking after your data terrain, so to make sure everything's ready. And the essence of this is the organizations are striving to become a data-driven organization. Now, it sounds like something you'd read in a newspaper. It's a really fancy, data-driven organization. What does that really mean? But the really important thing, I think, the message here is that this isn't about just having a really cool data platform or very clever tools that will actually help you move data around or analyze it at will. This is a lot more about all the other dimensions too. This idea of the culture of the organization has to be totally aligned to understand that data is the number one asset that we all have to use. And it's not just an IT problem or a cost center. It's a very different kind of concept of how data is viewed and how you can actually make use of it. And then the whole idea of the people and processes around it. Are our people, even the business, the line of business individuals, are they data literate? Are they able to understand what Generative is going to do and how it's going to do it and the constraints and issues with that? And of course, even how do I use some of these tools are going to be made available to me. And then, of course, finally, you've got the technology underpinnings here. And the idea is not just the actual platform and the building blocks, but the how do we empower the builders to be able to use these fluently and also understand how to build the top use cases the organization is craving to increase productivity or to innovate in other fields in the organization. So, of course, another really important part of this is actually the keeping your data secure, because I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable about using data for machine learning or for these new generative AI stuff. They're not sure where the data is going to go. They've heard horror stories about it being used to train the models. We've really taken a completely different approach here. There's a huge demarcation line between our data and your data. What we've built the models on are completely ring-fenced. We don't use other people's data. We don't scrape the internet for it and everything else, which really opens up the floodgates to lots of possible infringements of IP and all this kind of stuff. So we've made sure that the way we build our platform is very different. And of course, the data itself that you use in our platforms not only is encrypted and at rest and in flight, but obviously even when you connect to it, we have a lot of very, very secure ways, like using our, if you connect to the API, you have private links and you have these specialist VPC endpoints that you can connect to. And when you come to customize a foundation model, we kind of, all the data they use to train the model is also kept private. So it's set in your own enclave and there's no cross-pollination between anything else or use it back to kind of understand or retrain the model. This is your own space that you can experiment in. So we've covered those first two aspects here. Now let's look at these. Another dimension, really. These are applications and services that we have to increase the productivity, really, of your team members, depending if it's your business team or your builders. I've chosen a couple here today. There's many more interesting ones. So we'll talk about generative BI and kind of a joke. It's not a spelling mistake. It is BI, so business intelligence capability. So I think the biggest problem I've seen with business really getting their hands on something really useful other than just a chat conversation and they're trying to, summarize something. How can I get the most value out of my data? How can I democratize access to insights without me having to rely on complex data pipelines, people building dashboards for me? It becomes a really big IT friction point. So we've really built a different way of doing data insights. This is sitting on top of Bedrock. So I've just explained to you that's our GenAI platform. And it also does something else. It has this new capability called Data Zone that we've gone with GA now. And what this does in essence, is it able to wrap all the different data sets that are important to this particular inquiry. It could be on-prem, it could be in the cloud, it could be anywhere else. And it makes it available in a very secure way and curated way for people to ask questions of it. So all these dashboards here were built just by describing what you want to do. And you might not even know where the data is. You might not even know how to format it. None of that that matters anymore. because I'm not a data, let's say I'm not an analyst or data engineer. I just want to, these are the kind of questions I want to answer. So that is now going into the actual, this collective data set that we've made available securely for different individuals can only see what they're allowed to see. And you can actually ask it to build things for you, different views, etc. And we've taken a step further because we said, okay, that's cool, but there's a whole different type of way of presenting data. And this is talking about sort of data stories. And I love this. This is something that we do so often in Amazon. We love writing narratives. This is like a long, detailed explanation of the story behind how we got here, just so you're not just looking at a number and thinking, well, what's behind that? I haven't got the subject matter expert next to me explaining the context of that, where it came from, the history behind it. So what we do here now is we're able to, somebody would just type what they're looking for and say, create for me a data story, and it'll build this whole multi-page story with all the numbers, the graphs built in it, and pull that data back for you. Then you can share it internally. The team, people can collaborate on this thing and ask different questions. You can even go to a particular paragraph and say, actually, can you make that into summarized bullets as opposed to this? And it'll dynamically build it for you as we go along. So I'm just introducing a new era of democratizing insights, because that's really the essence of what is it we're trying to give an organization, really, without all the heavy lifting of coding. A couple more bits that you can actually do with this too. Of course, you can ask questions in natural language, multilingual, by the way. But you can do forecasting. You say, actually, you know what you've shown me the numbers up to now. What's going to happen over the next 5 months? And you can do this across 3 measures. So it's not just one thing, but across 3 measures, and you can triangulate all those together. So underpinning that is our forecasting ML service. So you don't even know how it does it. It's just using that service, pulling it in and generating that for you, looking forward. And of course, you can ask the ask why questions. A great one we were doing with a telco, they were looking at their NPS scores, and they couldn't work out why for one particular one, for the particular region, there was such low NPS scores. And so one of the directors said, let me just ask you the question, what is going on here? Why is this happening? So then, of course, there was no granular data they could drill into. Of course, you just had this number there, which looked pretty dire. But of course, this system has access to all that data that was built on, so that it could go back and articulate exactly what was causing that and all the contributing factors for you. So that's an example of us thinking in a different way. I'll pause and again, change now tact into Amazon Code Whisperer. So this is really a companion app for developers. You might have seen other types of things, but we've taken it to a different level, I feel, and I'll share with you some of these ideas. So, of course, it does code generation in real time. It helps you as you're developing, and this will work on any IDE. So we're not. It doesn't have to be anything specifically to an Amazon stack, and it's. Not only does it suggest what code to do, but it's also checking your existing code for all the vulnerabilities, known and unknown vulnerabilities that to you. It's also checking where this data, where this code snippet might have come from. So is it something that I could use freely, or is it got some restrictions on it that I might not be aware of? And many things like that. And of course, we've got 2 tiers. We've got an individual free tier that students and everyone else can just use and get most of these capabilities. And then we've got the enterprise tier, which has a bit more controls about the kind of things that people can do and which context you can do it in. So then we've got a couple more extra things that we can do with this now. So this is these are the kind of companies that have been using it at length. Accenture, of course, have been using it with us from day one. And what a really nice number we got back, because we all the experiments we did together, we wanted to make sure that what is the increase in productivity for the builders at Accenture, and the minimum extra benefit we got was 30%, and usually sometimes much higher than that, increased productivity for across the dev teams at Accenture. And we've done this with many other organizations and got similar or better results, of course. And again, it doesn't matter which language you're programming. We cover so many languages. Of course, we do Python, but we do some really interesting obscure languages. Go, and it's not obscure, but many other interesting languages. Yeah, I know. Open source, I love it, by the way. Then we'll just an extra little side here. We've got this new capability now, which is in preview, which is this customization. So the idea is now, not only am I going to just look at your code as you're writing it here and give you some advice or whatever based on what this LLM has been trained on, but but I can point it now. We can point it to all your code base in your organization. So the suggestions we give you now are based on how the patterns of how you develop software internally. So it's looking at your internal repository, and it uses that to recommend code snippets and everything else. So you have a lot more realistic blue chip kind of recommendations that based on how you do things best in your organization. And there's many other capabilities, but I won't dwell into that. You can look it up, of course. So we've covered those top aspects now. So let's look at really that foundational piece, which is actually what really matters. So this is really talking about the underpinning foundation behind this. So we've got incredible infrastructure here, but I'll just concentrate on just the chips that we use. So we've been spending 10 years now building our very specialist chips that are to help you with both. This is in machine learning specifically. We've got others too, of course. So Trainium, the names are great. I think you can guess what Trainium does. So when you're training a model, this is the kind of thing you could do, but you can get huge savings in running costs of these compared to our normal EC2 instances. And in French, this is for inferencing endpoints. Not only is it better price performance, but you also have a huge reduction in emissions and everything else because of all the reduced payloads here. And big organizations like Hugging Face and Anthropic, the foundation model developers actually use all this infrastructure themselves to be able to scale and run all this themselves. And these are some of the other organizations that we run with. I'm just going to play you a very quick video because that's another company that runs on our platform. I just want to show you that, and I'll breathe for a second. So Runway is another organization that I've been working with for it's built on AWS. It's using all our specialist chipsets and all the platform, but also our research fellows are collaborating with this organization. I'm going to quickly jump to another discussion, which is, okay, we've been looking at these great ways of developing POCs and playing around with everything else. How do we go to production? Do we just deploy it and wish it'll work well? I mean, this is, a lot of long-standing problems in machine learning anyway. We've developed a very detailed framework to help you really think about all the different steps. And this is really an extension of MLOps, as most of you might know that. So we've got another more acronyms, FMOps and LLMOps, as if we need any more acronyms. But I just would show you here the kind of the Venn diagram of this. Still, it touches technology, process, and people, but it covers all these other aspects that we have to systemize. We have to be able to build repeatable patterns and things that we can reuse over and over again to get good results continuously. So I'm just going to pick a few things from this framework. So even selecting models is one of the classic problems. I talk to dev teams. I've got so many to choose from. So this is just for a text-based thing. When I put this together about 2 months ago, there was about 13,000 available FMs out there, and within literally weeks, it's now 27,000 I need to choose from. So what people tend to do, they just stick with the ones they know, but there's so much more than that. So I wanted to build a systemized way of understanding what the models do, compare it against all the different kind of dimensions and things that we want to consider. We've built out a whole way of systemizing the prompt catalog that you might use to assess these models against all the different dimensions that might be important. I'm going through this very quickly, of course, but we have blogs written about this, and we can share much more information about this kind of stuff. So then we look at all the different dimensions that matter, where I bring it down to the top 3 that I'm going to be dealing with. And across all these dimensions, of course, speed is like latency and things, and cost and precision based on my use case. Now, there's a lot of data here. You don't have to worry. You can watch this later and catch up and look at the screen, I'm just going to show you, when do people start considering going into LLM ops and on these advanced functionality? So when you're in the foundation space, by the time you built 2 or 3 little POCs that have gone into production, you need to start looking at this idea of LLM ops and looking at all the other stuff. I'll leave that for later viewership. So again, for you to start your journey with this, there's lots of different personas here we talked about today. People who are just starting here. So we've got a huge amount of free resources that you can have, lots of workshops, academies, everything else like that you can actually tap in for free. And it covers any from zero to hero, as I use it badly often. And we've got a great course on Coursera, which we built with Andrew Eng, which goes through all the fundamentals of Gen AI and everything else like that. And there's many, many more resources there. You can easily search for it. And when you're ready to come and build, we have a specialist Gen AI innovation center that we funded with 100 million a few months ago. We can build POCs for the organizations you're working with. And of course, we have a great one where we do together with Accenture. We've got a launch pad that we innovate and prototype together, and we can ask me questions afterwards. This is a summary of some of those points we mentioned and why I feel that Gen AI and AWS is the most natural place, more secure and feature-rich that you can actually try your journey on Gen AI with. I've put you at the end some resources you might want to look at and read more about some of the things I very quickly touched upon in my rapid space. And now I'll take some questions if there's anything that would ask me. There's some here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are questions.
Okay, actually, the top question, I like that. This idea of you only pay when you use it, I forgot to say that. Of course, absolutely. So when you work with Bedrock, that's the whole model that we have. You only as you invoke it and you play with it, it's just charging you. If you're just assessing things, it's all free. So yeah, we have adopted the Lambda model, which we invented, and we're using it across these other kind of applications.
I would like to read a question loud if it's possible.
Yeah. So Claude, yeah, it's one of my favorites. And we did some of that in our workshop yesterday. We were playing around with some of that. And yeah, I mean, this is one of those constraints that you have to be aware of. You talked about choosing models, and we had all these different dimensions we have to consider. That's one of the classic dimensions that you have to understand, because for my use case, if I'm trying to put in a huge amount of text into it as a prompt, then I need a big context window. So we work with the constraints that are given, and we help you work around them. So this is available now, Bedrock. You can just jump in and it's available now for just in those areas I mentioned to you, but you can play around with it. It's available. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of here. Governance. There's a whole. This is part of the big framework I mentioned before. It's too big a topic, but you can reach out to me and we can go to a lot more details on that. I'm not sure about time, but are we still okay? Perfect.
Yes.
And then. Yes, we do. In fact, a lot of these services that we develop, like I mentioned a few before, like some of our supply chain kind of offerings, we build that from learning the hardware over years to become the best in the world doing supply chain. And then we bottled it up and we created it and made it available to you as a service. So supply chain as a service, we have the forecasting, the same thing. We went through the mill with that, really honing our skills internally, and we made that available as an ML service for you to use. And we've got dozens of these kind of things, and all these we built ourselves in-house, yes. And finally, I think, yeah, Code Whisperer. No, it doesn't use, use your data. So it only does it in the context of running that session with you in there. Nothing is sent up back to us or anything like that. It's fully sitting in your IDE with you, and there's no data shared back or stored anywhere else, etc. And that's why most organizations that use it, like Accenture, of course, are extremely private about what data can be shared and what context is going to be shared, and none of that is and this applies to all our services. It's not just this. Whenever you train a model on or fine-tune any of this and on Gen AI, none of that leaves the space that you're actually running it in, and it's just your data and your space. Okay, Again, this is anything to do with foundation models. If it's not on there, just wait 24 hours and it might be there. It's like the English weather. If you don't like it, if the weather's not good, just wait another hours and you get the sunshine or rain or whatever. Yeah, that's the same thing. So I hope I covered every question. There'll be loads more that come to you. Please feel free to reach out to me. And of course, I ran through the content too fast. I'm sorry, but some of these resources are left for you at the end. You might have a chance if you view it again later on, you'll be able to look at it and go into a bit more depth on that.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your answers.
Thank you.